Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Microfamily Millionaire. And this is a sub series to the Share the Wealth show, where I discuss strategies and tips and what I'm doing in the small multifamily space to help you get started on your first small multifamily acquisition. And today I'm actually going to come to you with some feedback and commentary that I got from a post I saw on social media about using first time homeowner loans. There were a lot of comments with a ton of misconceptions and a ton of different thought processes around the strategy of using first time homebuyer loans to build a portfolio of rental properties, right? So I'm going to break it all down and bring you the three biggest misconceptions I saw in those comments and the three biggest strategies you can use to implement this first time home buyer's loan to your benefit for building a portfolio. All right. So, have you ever thought that an FHA loan was only for first time home buyers? Do you even know what an FHA loan is? Or that you can't even rent out the units until after the first year? If these myths have been holding you back, it's time to set the record straight. And that's what we're going to address today. So, today we're breaking down some common FHA loan misconceptions and diving into some powerful strategies you can use, whether you're single, engaged, or married, to build wealth with small multifamily properties. Okay. So, firstly, FHA loans are one of the most powerful tools to use for new investors who want to break into the multifamily real estate space with minimal upfront capital. But a lot of misinformation and limiting beliefs are stopping too many people from taking advantage. So, by the end of this episode, you're not only going to understand the truth about FHA loans, but you're going to have some actionable strategies to help you get started building wealth today. So, misconception number one, you have to live there for a year before you can rent it out. So, let me explain this. That misconception is really a misunderstanding of the type of property being discussed. You can't just lump all scenarios into one assumption. If you buy a single family home with FHA, then yes, you have to live there for 12 months, a year before you rent it out if you don't want to live with anyone else or have a roommate, right? Of course, if you buy a two, three, or four unit multifamily property, then you can rent out the other units while you are still living in one of those units. FHA loans require you to live in one of the units as your primary residence. So you're actually free to rent out the other units from day one. So you can't just say, oh, you have to hold on to the whole property. You can't rent it out at all until 12 months is up. That's not true. That's really only true if you're talking about a single family home and if you don't want to have roommates, because you could rent out the other bedrooms in your single family home and no one is going to stop you or say anything about that. So, but that's another thing. If you don't feel comfortable living with roommates at this stage in your life, then don't do it, right? But those are the misconceptions that need to be cleared up. You can do that with multifamily properties. You can rent them out immediately. You don't have to wait. This actually, the strategy is called house hacking, and it's really one of the best ways to use FHA for cash flow and to get started. In fact, that's actually exactly how I started. I bought a building that had three apartments. I lived in one of those apartments and I rented out the other two. And that's how I covered my mortgage and my expenses. And actually, the other two units were already rented when I purchased it. The owner left that one unit vacant for me to move into. And I actually was engaged at the time that I closed on this property. I still closed on it in my own name, but in the time frame, the first few months after I closed, I rented out the other bedroom in my apartment to some roommates for some extra cash flow because my fiance at the time wanted to wait until his lease at his apartment was over before he moved in with me. So, anyway, that's just another way that you can maximize the strategy. So, misconception number two is that FHA loans lock you into high rates forever. Well, that's also another broad categorization of what loans are, and maybe you're just not understanding what other loan types also do. So if you think that an FHA loan is like a financial trap because it's a fixed interest rate and there's PMI is private mortgage insurance. The truth is, having a high rate, and I'm putting high in air quotes for people who are listening, it really depends on when in the market cycle you buy the property and what is going on with the rates in the economy and what rates the Fed has set, right? A fixed rate mortgage is actually a standard feature on most loan types, not just FHA. So having a fixed rate can protect you actually from periods of high rising interest rates like it was in 2023. The rates basically rose by a huge amount. I know my payment was not fixed and it was an interest only payment, and that actually doubled over the year, right? So having a fixed interest rate on your mortgage is not a bad thing. It's not trapping you. But what FHA does lock you into is the PMI. PMI, like I said, is private mortgage insurance, and it locks you into that for the life of the loan. You are going to pay private mortgage insurance on any loan type if you put down less than 20%. So if you get a conventional, if you get any other thing that lets you put down less than 20%, you're going to pay PMI, right? This is basically insurance or protection to the mortgage company in case for whatever reason you default. They're giving you a loan that's almost the value of the property, and depending on what happens in the market at the time, if values decrease, they may not have equity in the property, or they may not be able to recover their loan amount that they gave to you. So the PMI is basically insurance for them. So the problem with FHA for PMI is that PMI does stay on for the entire life of the loan. With other loan types, the PMI will drop off once you reach 20% equity. And that can happen because of market appreciation, principal pay down, or like a combination of both. The trick is to not get stuck with paying the PMI for the life of the 30-year term or whatever your amortized term is with FHA, is to refinance after you have 20% equity into a different loan type, like conventional or something like that, to get rid of that private mortgage insurance payment. And that really could be like a few $100s a month, just depending on what the balance of your loan is, if it was like a larger or smaller loan. Right. Misconception number 3 is that FHA loans are only for first-time home buyers. Now, this is the biggest misconception, right? Most people think first-time home buyer loan is FHA, and they think you just get it when you're the first time you ever buy a house, right? So a lot of people just assume that you buy that first house, you're done with FHA, you can't do it again. The truth is, FHA is not just for first time homebuyers. You can actually use FHA multiple times throughout your life. You just cannot have more than one FHA mortgage at the same time. So you can't have one FHA mortgage and then go buy another property with FHA. You have to refinance out of the first FHA mortgage into conventional or a different loan product, and then you can go buy a second property or a third property or whatever next property with FHA again, as long as the first property that you ever purchased is no longer under the FHA umbrella, right? So even that rule has some exceptions to it. Based on, like, let's say you have a change in your family size or relocation because of a job, things like that. There's still exceptions about that, more than one FHA at a time that a lender can do. So first time homebuyer loan as a label is really mislabeled. You can actually use it as part of your strategy to get multiple units. And that's what we're going to cover in the next section, is the strategies to leverage FHA for multifamily wealth building. So strategy number 1 is just house hacking a small multifamily property. Why buy a single family as your first purchase when you can house hack? right? You might not live in an area that is conducive to multifamily or whatever. So if or you might already have like a large family, you can't do an apartment. I understand, I get that. But for the best of your ability, and anybody who's in a situation where they can finagle doing a house hack is more than likely going to be you living in a apartment of a multi-apartment building. But if you can do it, I would say do it. It's a great way to set you up. So if you buy a 2 to 4 unit property, you live in one of the units and you rent out the other units. So anything above 4 units is considered commercial and you cannot use FHA for that. So anything 5 units and higher, you can't use FHA. But 2, 3, and 4 units, feel free to do it. Those size properties are considered residential. And so you can live there and use the FHA as a owner occupant type of loan for a low down payment, right? But if you do this and you rent out those other units, it really could cover your mortgage and your expenses, right? This gives you both like a place to live and a powerful cash flowing asset that can reduce or completely eliminate your highest monthly cost, which is your housing. And this is a win because you're going to gain landlord experience, you're going to build equity, you're going to save on your living costs, and you're really going to set yourself up for future investments. This gives you disposable income to either pay off consumer debt, to save, or to invest it, right? And if you want to take it to the next level and supercharge it even more, like I gave as example that I was doing, you can rent out the extra bedrooms in your apartment if you want to have a couple of roommates, right? So here, the next strategy is FHA for couples. Now, this can go a few different ways. The easiest way is, let's say you're dating or engaged and you don't yet live together. You can each buy a multifamily property separately using FHA and before combining your households and moving in together. That way, you start your marriage with two cash flowing assets and multiple units. Let's say you both got 3 units. Then you're living together now, you're married, and you have a 6 unit portfolio starting off your marriage instead of starting the relationship in debt because of a big wedding, right? Or the housing cost because you wanted to buy your dream single family home, right? But if you don't want to wait a year to be able to move in together, because that's one of the regulations with FHA is that you're supposed to live there for 12 months before you move out, right? Lenders will make an exception to that 12-month rule if it's an increase in family size or if you're moving a certain distance because of like your job or something. So like if you get married and you're like maybe adopting or having kids, or you're bringing in a parent or an in-law to live with you and you just need bigger space, you could potentially get clearance to buy another property using FHA by just communicating these household changes with your lender, right? But let's say you already live together or are married with your partner or spouse. The next option, you could first buy a multifamily property under one person's name, right? Live there for 12 months, and then use the second person to buy a multifamily property, and you guys move out and move into the second property. So I know the main concern with these strategies is that now you have to qualify, both people have to be able to qualify for their loans independently of each other instead of being co-borrowers. It is possible. I purchased my multifamily property on my own with no co-borrowers, with no co-borrowers. And I am not, and I was not at that time, a high income earner. And I purchased in New York City. So there is a way around it. Also, just this is another way to help you qualify for the mortgage. And a lot of people don't know this. The other units in the building, 75% of the rent for those units will be added to your income to help qualify you for a higher purchase price because a multifamily property is going to cost a little bit higher than a single family property. So if you have 3 other units in the property, let's say you got a 4 unit, you're going to live in one, the other 3 units are going to be rented out. Whatever 75% of those rents are, you add those together and you add that onto your annual income from your W-2, and that helps give you a higher debt to income ratio and a higher income to be able to handle the cost of that mortgage payment for the building, right? So if you didn't know that, make sure now you're looking at buildings with the eye of taking 75% of the rent that you would get and adding that to your income to qualify you. Besides these strategies requiring each person in the couple to be able to qualify for the loans on their own, also there's some living sacrifices with arrangements and things like that, just depending on the strategy that you choose. But honestly, if you're both of the same mindset and you see the big picture and the big benefit of owning rental real estate assets, then these strategies, honestly, it's not that bad of a compromise. Being able to own a property for such a small amount down is a huge, huge advantage, right? Strategy number 3 is refinancing and reusing the FHA loan. So I did mention this earlier, but if you use an FHA loan, once you get to the 20% equity, either from market appreciation or principal pay down, just like when I was discussing getting rid of the private mortgage insurance, refinancing also gets you out of having an FHA in your own name. So now you're able to go and purchase another multifamily property using FHA again. But there's also another contender in this low down payment space. And we haven't talked about that really yet. I think I mentioned a little bit, but it's conventional mortgages. Conventional mortgages now allow 5% down payment on 2 to 4 unit properties, which really opens up the low down payment multi-unit opportunity to like a much wider audience. Previously, with conventional loans, you couldn't get a 2, 3, or 4 unit property for 5% down. Especially at 3 or 4, they were asking like 15%. So FHA was your best bet to get in for a low down payment. Now that 5% is available, right? It's really gives people more options. So FHA might have some higher closing costs, but it's also more lenient in credit score regulations and your debt to income requirements, and actually still has a slightly lower down payment at 3.5%. But if you can qualify for conventional with 5% down, then you wouldn't have to refinance to get rid of the private mortgage insurance. Once you hit 20% with conventional, it will fall off the PMI that you're paying. So, other thing with this strategy is it's really highly scalable. No matter which loan you go with, FHA at 3.5% or conventional with 5%, this strategy allows you to rinse and repeat, growing your portfolio over time with a much smaller out of pocket capital outlay than with traditional investment loans, which really could be like are normally between 15 and 20% down payment, right? So, what I want you to do, if you're really serious about multifamily investing, FHA or conventional at 5% owner occupied down payment is really a fantastic way to house hack to get your foot in the door of multifamily investing. So, if you're serious, I challenge you to take action today. Start now to set yourself up for whatever year you're listening to this. At this moment is the best moment. This is your sign to get started, right? Whether it's researching FHA requirements, whether it's finding a lender or a broker, or if it's scouting for multifamily properties, commit to the one step that gets you closer to the goal. Commit to doing one thing at least, right? Remember, building wealth starts with the decisions that you make today. So don't let limiting beliefs or myths or things that you hear other people tell you, especially if they haven't even done it before, right? Don't let that stop you from pursuing the opportunities that really could change your life. Me doing this, my first multifamily house hack, completely changed my life and opened up so many other doors for me and so many other opportunities. So, if this episode opened your eyes to new possibilities, then share it with somebody who you know is considering buying their first multifamily property and help them take control of their financial future, right? If you just need help getting started, you can reach out for access to my small multifamily online course to get started with one-on-one mentorship if you need more hand-holding and accountability, right? I'm here to help in whatever way you need. Schedule a call and I can throw you out some ideas, give you some resources, even if you're not interested in the course, even if you're not interested in mentorship, right? My whole goal is to help you succeed, to help my community succeed, help us get started and start owning and building wealth through multifamily ownership, right? So, in any case, thank you for hanging in there, tuning in, and I will see you on the next episode.